January 6th started off pretty much like any other day. It wasn't until I started listening to the speeches that I felt that day was going to be a bad day.
You have to show strength, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
I work in what should be one of the most secure buildings in the whole world.
It just never occurred to me that a mob would get into the Capitol building.
When you really believe a tyrannical government is taking over the country, you're going to have some crazy stuff go down.
It was soccer balls, truck drivers. It was America.
People with pitchforks, baseball bats sticking out of their bag. People in full tactical outfits.
Pepper spray started coming out. Gas grenades started going off. Just broke into pure anarchy.
Individuals themselves aren't usually a problem. But when they get together and they create a mob, the mob is the weapon.
To hear the radio transmissions is very chilling.
13 hours, Capitol has been breached.
I had all these thoughts in my mind, like, could there be a shootout on the United States Senate floor?
Everybody was making a call to someone. The last phone call. I just started to pray.
I have literally bled for this country in combat, and they were all yelling, "You're traitors to your oath, enemy of the people." It was like, how fucking dare you?
They wanted to stop this election. If we run away, they were going to kill us to do it.
I didn't think I was going to go home that day.
Communications in line with combat.
I just watched her life drain right out of her eyes.
40 or 50 officers battling 15,000 people. I've been a police officer for 2 decades. A mob grabbed him. He was having difficulty breathing. You don't have to take my word for it. Watch my body worn camera footage.
Peaceful patriots.
Started getting tased at the base of my skull.
Very frightening situation.
Kill him with his gun. Pure chaos.
He raised his pitch
Heart attack, traumatic brain injury.
Take away their weapons.
I still haven't made sense of it.
All right, everybody, this is Steve with Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. You know, I don't normally talk about this stuff. It usually, when it comes to Trump and things like that, doesn't really get my rocks off. I don't spend hardly any time on it. I don't spend a lot of time critiquing the parties either, because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about electoral solutions. Everybody thinks about electoral solutions, and here we are in the middle of going through a pandemic, in the midst of a climate crisis, etc. And we haven't seen any legislation of any substance whatsoever come to help the people, help the planet, help anyone. And so as a lefty, you know, I've taken the time to do something I didn't do when I was younger, and that is start reading theory, start reading Lenin, start reading about the French Revolution, start reading about the Haitian Revolution, start reading about the American Revolution through Howard Zinn's eyes, of course, though, as opposed to the propaganda, the bullshit propaganda that we've heard. But what you saw right there, minus some of the testimonials and so forth, what you saw right there is a documentary on the quote unquote insurrection at the Capitol. And it's called 4 Hours at the Capitol. It's an HBO special. Now, why am I talking about this as opposed to MMT or, you know, any number of things? The reason why I'm talking about it is because at the end of the day, we have choices, right? Going back to Rosa Luxemburg, it's either been reform or revolution, reform or revolution. It's either or, it's Boolean. Or you can straddle the fence, as many people do, fight for the current wins so that people don't suffer today while simultaneously looking towards the future when the material conditions will come together in such a way that a revolution is possible. You know, whether it be an armed revolution or whether it be a peaceful revolution, whether it be direct actions, whatever. The point is that history shows us what that looks like. Now, mind you, technology has changed dramatically. Thank God I'm over 40 because the internet wasn't around when I was making a lot of my stupid decisions. So there's not as much of a record of some of the stupidity that I went through. But if you're trying to analyze January 6th through the establishment lens, you're probably not going to get what you need out of that documentary or out of that moment. Now, I am 0% Trumper, 0% libertarian, 0% on that side of the game. I am a lefty, and I consider myself to be a revolutionary. And when I say that, I'm not saying that I'm going to pick up a gun. I'm not saying that I want to hurt anyone. I believe that we need an intelligent, intellectual, a people-led, a populist-led movement that will literally take over by not giving up, by not giving in, by not quitting, by not slowing down, by not getting distracted. But what I saw in that documentary, some of the politicians and stuff like that, you could easily write it off because they had their mouthpieces to say. But what I saw, because there was no cameras in France in the 1790s, there was no camera in France when they were storming the Bastille. But I can only imagine, as I think back to when the peasants rose up, what they might have looked like. And people, went into the Bastille, took it over, killed people, put their heads on pikes, you name it. 1700s, mind you. But nonetheless, that's what people did. But I thought to myself, as I watched the crowd radicalize in real time, as they pushed through the gates, and I saw them enter into the halls, we know full well that the United States government has more arsenal, more weapons, more defense mechanisms, you name it, than anyone else in the world. We are a militarized country. Could they have stopped this before it started? Yes. So let's not get wrapped up in the establishment narrative. Let's think about what would happen, or what might happen, or what it would take for a left wing, for a populist lefty, for a socialist revolution, for a progressive revolution. What would that even look like? And I thought to myself, that might be what it starts out looking like. It might be. I mean, yeah, they're not going to have stars and bars on their back. Yes, they're not going to be bigots. Yes, they're not going to have MAGA hats on. Yes, they're not going to have goatees and bikes and, friggin' don't tread on me flags and bullshit like that. But they're not that different than what a left-wing, quote unquote, insurrection might look like if we took to the streets, if we did something like this. And that shook me to the core, because as you watch, I don't think people are ready for any of that. I don't think they're ready for any of that. And the average person can't stick with the movement most of the time because they're beaten down already, worn to a nub. Many people are listless. They have no hope. Those are the seeds, the material conditions, when the contradictions of the existing system become so overwhelming, so beyond our ability to cope with, that you have no choice but to revolt. You use a different term. I can't take it anymore. I'm going crazy. But when people unite and have that experience together, that's what happens with revolutions. And over the course of time, you can see that revolutions are not an instance. They're not an event. They're a bunch of little micro seismic activities that occur till the big boom, till the big R happens. And a lot of times these little seismic activities, just like, earthquakes, they don't amount to anything. They just beep, 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 and they're done. They're gone, right? But when they're not gone, when they rise, when the conditions get so untenable that the people really do rise up, what does that really mean? You're not working. Probably a real revolution isn't going to be done in time for kids' bedtime. It's not going to be ready for you to go to work the next day. No, it's not. It's going to be something that goes on. And you think to yourself, what would it take to survive that as a lefty if you were really doing this? You better have mutual aid and food and shelter, medical help, legal help, whatever. I mean, if you're really revolting, you're not going to want to really worry about legal support because you're hoping you're taking the whole thing down, right? Well, as you can see, they stopped after 4 hours in January 6th. And it's being used for every ounce it can be used against Donald Trump, and rightfully so. Donald Trump was a parasite. But that's neither here nor there. I really don't want to focus any energy on Donald Trump. Fascist. It's a disgusting way of life. But this is what happens in a neoliberal society where people are left destitute, struggling, constantly begging for help. People that shouldn't need help or you don't think would need help. On their last wish and beg, trying to survive. You can have all the MMT you want, but ultimately, if they are not going to serve the people's needs, this blip, this seismic activity that happened on January 6th is just going to be one of the small blips. If the material conditions keep worsening, if the people become so jaded and so despondent and enraged, and they lose hope that change is possible, you'll get revolution. We're not there yet. We're nowhere near that. But I don't think the average person, when they get bitchy and moany about the establishment, it's easy to hate the establishment. I hate the establishment. They don't do anything for us. They lie to us. We're sold that the Dems are better because, they're not the Republicans. And then you've got the red browns who try to make the Republic, well, they're not as bad as the Democrats, even though I'm a lefty, but Trump wasn't so bad, whatever. All the fucking nutsos. The whole place is fucking nutso right now, right? I mean, nothing's real. Nothing feels right. Everything feels fucked up. And you watch that video. You can find yourself even sympathizing, with the police officers. They're probably friends of yours. I mean, I'm from DC, so I knew some of those people. I went to high school with them. They're just regular people. Now, they may be turned into jackbooted thugs or whatever else we want to coin them, but they're still just regular people you went to high school and middle school and elementary school with. So how would you assess where we are on that long arc of revolution in this country? I mean, you got everybody, the dollar's going to die. Well, if the dollar's going to die, the whole country will collapse, and then you'll have a revolution. And it'll look a lot like that January 6th event, except it'll be more widespread. Lord help us for those people that are arthritic or elderly or otherwise, incapacitated in some way. The services that they would need, you got to prepare for that, right? You've got to prepare for that. Or you're saying, hey, this revolution's going on the way it's going on, and I don't care who dies. I don't care if our own team dies. We're just doing this thing, right? No, you've got to have mutual aid set up. You've got to have that network, that system in place to support folks as they put it all on the line. This is like a real life strike of sorts, right? This isn't just a strike at the plant. This isn't like a work general strike. This is a revolution. And one of the most shameful, and folks, I mean, this is shameful for a lefty or for a counter for a revolutionary minded person that's part of the quote unquote movement, to blow this off like it was nothing misses the point entirely. They're so damned quick to try to rub a shit turd in a shit lib's face that they miss the big point of what they just saw. This doesn't have to be sucking into the establishment narrative. There are some truly awful people out there that will accuse you of being into the establishment because you talk about the January 6th event. And you don't do it like Glenn Greenwald, where you just pretend like it didn't happen or whatever. Or the other folks out there who try to make it seem like, oh, that's just propaganda. What is propaganda? It's education. The word has gotten perverted in so many different ways that we don't even realize it. But the fact is, if you are serious about making change, if you are serious about taking the power back, and you vote and you canvass and you do this and you do that, and nothing changes, you might be willing to do more than just try to cast a ballot. I mean, remember Malcolm, the bullet or the ballot? I mean, these things, we have been denied so many times representatives serving our needs. I mean, remember when they said to elect Ossoff and Warnock, we're going to get $2,000 checks. Whew. Did that happen? Nope. Was it enough to make the people revolt? Nope. Medicare for all. We don't have health care in the middle of a pandemic. Was that enough to make the people revolt? Nope. Black Lives Matter, the death of George Floyd, the killing, the murder of George Floyd. People took to the street. Was that enough to bring about revolution? Nope. Bernie Sanders was robbed twice, or he was part of the picture, whatever the fuck ever, right? You didn't get what you wanted. Was that enough to make people revolt? Nope. When you see that many people at the mall in DC, it looks like a lot of people. Well, it is a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. But when it comes to changing the overall country, it was like pissing in the ocean. It was nothing. It was a tiny little nothing burger. Just like when you'd see those huge crowds at a Bernie Sanders rally. You're talking about 28,000 people showing up to a rally. That's huge. That's almost half of what a football team gets on a normal Sunday game. Almost half. Some of those stadiums have 70, 80, 90,000 people filled with waiting lists. You got 28,000 people showing up for a Bernie Sanders rally, and we feel like, God, you see all the people. Of course, we've got enough for a revolution. Wrong. Wrong. Once again, 350 million people in the United States. Now, they say it only takes like 3%, and that's where the 3%ers get their moniker. But you have not seen a movement committed similar to like the Black Panthers. Because what happens? As soon as you see that kind of unification, that kind of organization, the CIA infiltrates, the COINTELPRO kicks in, they bribe some second in command, they Judas kiss them, they sell them out. We're a long way from revolution. I'm just being honest. I just want you to think about it. Because as you watch that video, if you're capable of not owning shit libs for just a minute, put the shit libs to the left or the right or wherever you want to put them in the trash. I don't care. But if you can take a minute to not thinking how cool it is to own shit libs just for a second, and do a little bit of historical research, a little bit of reflection. You know that the Russian Revolution didn't look anything like this. You know, they were coming back from World War I. The country was freaking starving. They were in poverty. They'd never known anything different. They had been peasants. And lo and behold, many of the men were out there in the fighting in the battles. And so there was very few at home. And so the Bolsheviks were able to do what they do. If you want to read a good book or listen to a good audio book, 10 Days That Shook the World by John Reed, very, very good book. Read it. I think it's important, though, that you not make your first priority owning shit libs, that you make your first priority understanding theory, understanding history, understanding where this fits in there. And it's good to have a skeptical mind. It's good to have questions. It's good to not just deep throat the narrative, but it's even more majestic to use your mind, use your brain. We have a lot of reactionaries in this country, a lot of people that can't be bothered to think. They won't unite. They're just basically a cancer in many ways. It's like a rogue strain of bullshit that they just put into your life, and it just thwarts any chance of organizing. But we haven't been able to organize ever. And I'm not even talking about some sort of insurrection, or some sort of hitting of the Capitol. I doubt they thought that through. Some people did. I'm sure there were some people that thought that through. I mean, you saw cops selfieing with them. You saw some other things. But the fact of the matter is that once the people got revved up, you can't make all those people do something. It's almost like without preparation. It's almost like spontaneous at some level. Now, I know that this was not spontaneous. There was lots of notice ahead of time, right? But I remember back to Occupy inauguration. I was in D.C., hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets. We had been at Malcolm X Park, speaking there, and then we came there and we were right around, McPherson Square, I think it was. And Michael Moore and some other people were there, giving speeches in front of huge audiences. And I remember we were just getting our legs under us. We were part of a large coalition. There was the Disrupt J20 crew. A lot of people got in trouble for that too. But I remember walking through the streets in solidarity. I was standing by Chase Iron Eyes. I had, a bunch of people from the Progressive Independent Party at the time, the Green Party, you name it. And we were all there. And you're walking through the streets and there's freaking smoke everywhere. There's like little flashbang grenades going off. There's tons of pepper spray. And there's people throwing rocks and bottles and bricks, driven cops all over the place. They're all, just tons and tons and tons of things that you see in movies, but never really experience. Well, I was there and I experienced it. And I remember I had two of our camera guys were on 12th Street. I think I was a couple blocks away with one of our other people. And the crowd was just running hard, running from pepper spray and the smoke and stuff. And people were getting close to trampled. And you go down the street and all of a sudden there was these guys in black suits throwing, not suits, but like black outfits, throwing bricks through windows and jumping on cars and breaking the windshields and stuff like that. And you're like, I don't remember seeing them. I don't think we organized with them. Who are these people, right? And you have the infiltrators that set you up so that you get busted and so that you end up failing. But I think that it's important to know that each time we've had these moments, I thought we were going to have a bona fide revolution back in 2016 when we were in Philadelphia at the DNC. I don't know if you all remember that. That was pretty fucking insane. It was crazy. There's pictures of people at the gates by the thing shaking. It was people getting crushed and squished. Same story. The only difference is that there wasn't the violence, not the direct, I'm trying to hurt you violence. Whatever. People died on the 6th, and there were suicides after the 6th. And you have to ask yourself, what would have happened had they been successful? Whatever success means. I don't know. I have no idea what their, internal manifesto might have said. I mean, they were just, hey, look, we're here, man. Let's smoke a doobie. The shaman man wanted to take a shit on the seat. Hey, I get it. Okay. But what would have happened if they would have been successful? You know what I'm saying? What if, right? It's all the what ifs that people get stuck on. But you do need to process that through history. And I think that our movement is not ready, sadly, or whatever. It's just, it's not a moral decision. It is just where it is. We're not there yet. We're not there. We're not only not organized, but the material conditions, as bad as they are for some, is not equally shared. Sadly, just like under Reagan, there's a ton of people that are doing just fine right now that none of this stuff matters to. Others, yours truly, others, struggling to wonder, even with a good job, how they're going to cover $120,000 of student debt for jobs that never came to be, for homes that are underwater with forbearances that the mortgage companies are ready to foreclose on. Lots of fraud, lots of other things to put you in precarity. You'd think that as bad as it is for some, with the evictions, the pandemic, you name it, that there might be some organized unrest. But alas, there's really not. We're seeing some strikes happen right now. John Deere, Jordan Chariton's doing some great work covering that. But overall, these are still tiny pockets of resistance, tiny pockets of just a little pushback, right? We're not even talking about like, we're talking about, I'm just not going to do my job for a little while. We're looking for some better conditions. Okay. I mean, it's important, but it's not revolution. You'd like to think that might be the kindling that sets us on fire, brings about a whole bunch of, union strikes across the country, but unions have been fully depleted for the last 40 years. 40 years we've watched it. I think less than 5%. I don't know. I'm probably screwing that up. I don't want to play too fast and loose, but it's a very, very small amount of actual private sector unionization. I think the public sector is somewhere in the 30 percentile range. They've put laws in the books, tons and tons of laws in the books to criminalize strikes. So if you go on strike, you're in many cases breaking the law, right? So it requires solidarity and it requires commitment and it requires that kind of drive and organized and mutual aid. For those of you who have never walked a picket lines, the strike pay is shit. I mean, I remember working at CWA Local 2222 back in 93 through, I guess, 98. We went on strike a couple times through that period. And, you didn't get any pay. And many people didn't have two coins to rub together. They couldn't save money. And the company knew that when it came to negotiations, they better cut the overtime down because the more people could work overtime before the strike, they would have enough money to keep them going for a while after the strike. So they would cut overtime. So you got to have something there because otherwise you've got let's say a blue collar cable splicer who makes 80, 90,000 a year with overtime, maybe 100,000 with overtime. That's a lot of money to some, but they're working 80, 90 hours a week, climbing 30-foot poles, going up in bee-infested, snake-infested, rough terrain. But even still, with housing, food, family, saving for kids' college, whatever, all the normal things that regular people do when they have the ability to do it, they have to go out and suddenly go flip burgers or go deliver pizzas or do something. because otherwise most families can't survive a week, much less 2 or 3, without pay. So that was just a blip on the radar. I doubt that that January 6th moment would have carried on much further than that regardless. But assuming that it did, where would it have gone from there? It would have gotten snuffed out most likely. There just wasn't the numbers. There just wasn't the volume, unless they took a bunch of hostages or something like that. So now I'm saying this not without any glory, without any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not trying to build this up and make it something more than it is. I'm trying to let us see as lefties here what that might look like for us. And, I think that it's important because if you don't revolt, and we're not near it, that only leaves you with a couple choices. Either A, you check out completely from the system and build mutual aid and get ready for when the time comes. Or B, you fight and try to impact public policy through direct action, electoral crap, whatever. But ultimately, you've got to make different decisions. Just because you want a revolution doesn't mean that the material conditions have been met. The contradictions have not gotten to such a crescendo that a revolution is even possible, much less a successful one. Just to get to the point of a revolution, takes a hell of a lot. To push it over the edge to be successful, I mean, you'd almost need the military to say, we're not stopping them. We're just going to not stop them. We're just going to let them do whatever. And that's sort of what happened in Russia. That's sort of what happened there. We're not going to kill all the Russians, whatever. But here, I want you to think about something. The military is pumped full of red-blooded, jingoistic, these colors don't run, stars and bars forever. They're not going to take kindly to a left-wing revolution, are they? They've been trained to hate socialism in many ways. They're out there on the battlefield dying to kill it. How might that look? How might that look, guys? And believe me when I say this, no matter how many laughing emojis with the tears coming out, ha ha ha, kind of ones you put on Twitter to mock the shit libs, doesn't put you even a centimeter closer to revolution. It's almost trolly, right? The emoji, ha ha ha, the tears coming out, whatever. If you feel that's a revolutionary act, you go for it. But we're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near it. And I think that it's time for this movement, if there is such a thing as a movement in this country right now, that is not a red-brown alliance, that is a labor movement, that is a left movement, if that thing even exists, if there's any potential for it, I think it's time to start really assessing where we are in that arc. Now, if you go back, I'll put an exclamation point on this. When you look at the Haitian Revolution, most people tip their hat to Toussaint Louverture as the father of the revolution for Haiti. But it was really Dessalines who took it to the hole, who really, really dunked on Europe and the US, really, quite frankly. But neither Toussaint nor Dessalines were the father of that revolution. No, you have to go back some 50 years earlier to an African bourgeois, a guy who was a well-read Muslim named Mackendal. And Mackendal was a mystic figure. He had the ability to poison people. And he had rumored to poison, not rumored, it's documented, but he had killed 6,000 people, 6,000 plantationers down in what was at the time Saint-Domingue. And then when he was captured, he was tied to a tree. And when they burned him alive, the tree cracked in half. And the saying was that he had become, his spirit had entered into the tsetse fly because of his poison. And so he became this mystical creature, this mystical figure. That was 50 years before Toussaint. And the whole France-led, Spain-led, US and, Great Britain, all of them fighting over the island. All those islands, actually. It wasn't just Saint-Domingue. I mean, it was a bunch of the islands throughout that. But Haiti was called the Pearl of the Antilles. It was the place to be. And the Haitians, at the time, the Saint-Dominguians, whatever, they fought like maniacal madmen. And they beat all of the armies of Europe. They sent France packing. They sent the English packing. They sent the French packing. They sent all of them packing. And Dessalines just brutally killed them all, killed all of those soldiers. He kept the smart, he kept the scientists, he didn't kill the women as long as they were willing to take on a slave for a husband, one of the islanders for a husband. And so the myths of Dessalines being a brutal killer, they're not 100% wrong. He killed a lot of people, but rightfully so, because they kept coming back. And he said, fuck you. He dimed on Toussaint, had Toussaint captured and sent back to France, where he died in a jail cell in the Italian Alps, French Alps. And then Dessalines did what he did, and he became the, father of Haiti, basically. That's a revolution. But it took 50 years. 50 years. Don't look at the U.S. Revolution. That was a bunch of bougie white dudes with lots of money coming from the old country. And they didn't want to pay money to England anymore. And so they shit on the serf, shit on the indentured servants, shit on the slaves, shit on everybody, and got them to fight a battle for them. Only to turn around and try and do the same thing in the Mexican-American War. They didn't pay them. They didn't feed them. They treated them like shit. That was no real revolution. That was the wealthy breaking free of England. But we celebrate the American Revolution like it's a real revolution. It wasn't. France was a bougie revolution. It wasn't the poor rising up. It was a bourgeoisie doing it. But Haiti, that's a real revolution, a bottom-up revolution. And what do you see in France? As soon as that revolution was fought, what happened? The counter-revolutionary monarchists came back. And you know what? After they decapitated Robespierre, they went ahead and brought back the monarchy just for shits and grins. Another King Louis on the throne, only to have Napoleon Bonaparte take over. But you see, if you go to sleep, once you go to sleep, you're always looking over your shoulder. The revolution happened, but now you got to maintain it because there's a counter-revolutionary force always ready to come back. So as you watch 4 hours at the Capitol, Don't allow somebody to tell you that paying attention to that is somehow or another sucking into the establishment narrative. Fucking loser would say that. No, it's knowledge. It's something to glean. It's something to analyze, not just take at face value, but to consider. Because if you tell me that you're not going to vote, you tell me that you're not going to pay attention to electoral politics, you tell me that you're not going to organize to try to win elections, then that tells me that you've got to either be A, not giving a fuck, just shit posting all over social media, or B, you're planning for a revolution. I'm making no value judgments here. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just telling you that with socialist history, with socialist theory, with understanding the arc of revolution, with watching it happen in France and the conditions they went through, watching it happen in Saint-Domingue and Haiti and watching the conditions they went through, watching it happen in the US and watching the conditions they went through, and then watching it in Russia and the conditions they went through, analyze today through a revolutionary mindset. People that are getting caught up in current events and aren't doing that, they're missing the plot. And sadly, it's probably like 99% of the people. And that, my friends, has got to change or there will be no change. So I thought about this and I kept thinking to myself, how many people probably, they're caught up in ivermectin, caught up in whining about a mask, caught up in bitching about, vaccines and shit like that, finding common ground with fascists, and still no revolution. Just a lot of shit posting on Facebook and social media. You answer yourself. Go back home. Go back in your mind. Smoke a doobie, drink a beer, have a cup of coffee, drink some tea, hang out somewhere, think about it, read. Read What Is to Be Done by Lenin. Read some Engels. Find out. Read some Kropotkin. Read some of the Enlightenment thinkers. Read Rousseau. Because all the current events do is distract us. That's all the alt media that covers nonstop, current events does is just a distraction. It's a warm, fuzzy place to sit back and feel like, oh, we're all on the same page. Oh, I got 300 likes on my tweet. Well, 300 out of 350 million. Yeah. Not getting it done. Not getting it done. So here, I want to put this up here real quick. I don't know whether I like this comment or not, but I want to read it. Chris Garrett, remember the end of the movie War Games reminds me of the capitalism game. What a silly game to play. It takes place over. Yeah, no, man, it's a great comment. I agree. Let's see. Do we have any? Here's one. Paul, too many distractions. It's hard to spread truth. Ain't that the truth? Let's go through here. I just want to see. So I'm so sorry that I haven't been able to do this in real time because I've really been trying to. Let's read this. I don't know if I'll like this or not, but I'm going to read it anyway. Curious one. It is silly. It is stupid beyond belief. I mean, this pure psychopathy. There is no other way for this to make sense. Yeah, I don't disagree, but I want you to think about this, right? Again, Boolean logic, zeros and ones. It's either or, right? Not everything in life is black and white. Most things are not reducible to either or. Lights on, lights off, okay. Pregnant, not pregnant, okay. But most things are more like horseshoes, right? It's like who gets closest? Beanbags, who gets closest? Shuffleboard, who gets closest? Right? When you're playing war games, you have these blast radius. Who gets closest? And as I'm looking at this, I realize, at least for me, this is my personal takeaways from some of this. There's a part of me that was jealous of watching the maggots storm the Bastille. That they had enough belief in some bullshit, mind you, no question about it, okay? But they had the belief enough in whatever insanity they were doing that they were committed to it. Again, slight bit of jelly, just a little bit. The right wing has always been able to out-organize the left because the right wing only has to defend what is. It's not trying to change the world. It's not trying to fundamentally change. We already are a fascist state. They're trying to maintain that. But for the left, we have a million neat ideas. Getting everybody to agree on what those neat ideas are is a hell of a lot more difficult than just defending what is, right? And capital will defend capital at all times. So what does capital do? Puts its money where its mouth is. Where is it going to get its most bang for its buck? What did the left do? Shits on anything that remotely looks like it might have some traction because, after all, we can't unify. That wouldn't be like the left, right? The left will fuck it up. Sucks, but it's true. Have you ever seen the left really united? We saw a little bit of it during Bernie, but it didn't take but 5 seconds for people to shit on that. The right, they don't suffer from that. But if you're a socialist, that's a big if. A lot of people, socialists, social democrats, maybe you're a socialist, sort of, whatever. That whole spectrum, right? If you're a socialist, the working class is the 99%. And that means you're going to have to find a way to build a larger coalition if you're going to have a revolution. Period. We don't seem to be capable of doing that. Doesn't mean we can't. I mean, obviously, in the grand scheme of all these possibilities, we could. But in the grand scheme of all these possibilities, we always choose not to. Why? I don't know. As soon as one person gets a case of, I didn't get what I wanted, water finds its own level and all the malcontents fade away and the movement sifts away. And all of a sudden, Group A starts chasing some Tulsi person, or Group B starts chasing whatever. It's usually some libertarian strain that fucks it all up for us. But whatever. The point is, we never find a way to unite, and we never find a way to organize. And every time we try to organize, it's always around fucking electoral politics. So I think that if you take a step back and really analyze where we are today, and if you're really truly honest about where we are in terms of the arc of revolution, you're going to realize that the only way forward is to organize. And we might not see fruit of this in our lifetime because we have failed to organize for so long. And the right has been organized forever. They've got the power of capital behind them. Think about what I'm saying. And if at the end of the day you find yourself thinking that I'm sort of parroting some freaking establishment narrative, if that's still where you end up landing, I don't know what to tell you. I'm giving you an instruction from my perspective. Read some history. Dig into the theory. Go to Marxist.org and read Lenin. Read Engels. read Trotsky, read Stalin, read all of these people just so you can learn. I'm not telling you to fall in love with them. I'm not telling you to spoon with them. I'm not telling you to go to freaking Leningrad and freaking stroke Lenin's dead corpse with some sort of, I'm not asking you to do any of that. I'm asking you to be a student of history and a student of revolution so that you can be effective in helping organize. And I'm not talking even necessary for revolution. I don't think we'll see anything like that in our lifetime unless, of course, it's brought on by the people that really are organized, the right. I just think it's important for us to realize the importance of this before we lose the moment. We slip the plot. These things, these moments in time are precious if we use them for the right reasons. But if we think owning shit libs equals revolution, I guess I don't even really need to tell you how stupid that is, do I? I really don't need to tell you how stupid that is. Anyway, my name's Steve Grumbine, and I don't do this very often anymore because I've gotten to the point where I feel like my podcast, I do a lot of audio podcasts, and I focus on education. Why? Because we need to learn. We need to learn, not want to learn. We need to learn. It's all fine and well to hear your friends opining, but we need to learn. We're not an educated movement. We have slipped the plot. We don't understand revolution. We don't have a clue where we are in the arc. We didn't get what we wanted over here. Oh my God, we're angry, so we're over here. That's not scaring anyone. It's not. So if you want to hear, right now I've got a podcast called Macro and Cheese. Comes out every Saturday morning. It's on our website. Go to realprogressives.org, go under media, and check out Macro and Cheese. You can do it while you're cutting the grass, taking a shit, sleeping, doing whatever. You can listen to it. You don't have to stare at my mug. You can listen to me and the guest. It's a great podcast. I say that with a straight face, and it's not because I'm biased. It's a great podcast. We also have the new Untouchables, which talks about the corruption at the top. Just finished season 2, same place, realprogressives.org, drop down media, new Untouchables. Then we have another one coming up, and that's what generated this particular live stream right here. That's another podcast we're going to be putting out called The S Word. And the S Word is a group of people, different colors, different races, different ages, different genders. And we're exploring history. And we're evaluating history, both through a lens of what's happening here in the United States today, but also through a theoretical lens. And we're learning through the process because we feel like it's so important for this movement. It's not just the diehard socialists. They're already reading Marxist.org. I'm talking about the people that came into the Bernie movement that never had any theory backing them, that never took the time to learn this stuff, that are relatively new politicos, but they see stuff as wrong and they just don't know what to do about it. That's what this podcast will be about. S is for struggle and S is for socialism. But we go back and we look at the arc. And it's that arc that will help you better understand where we are. Because all things come to a point where the contradictions are too much and change has to happen. Sometimes it's just natural and you don't even realize it just slips into the next phase. Sometimes there's a bloody revolution. History, read it. It's worth your time. And with that, I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Hope you'll support us. Keep coming back. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.